Yep, it messed up again.
Can you see it on screen?
Yes. Okay. We're good. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the webinar tonight. Our presenter we have is Dr. Patrick Flynn, and he's going to be speaking about stress and depression in our practice and how to deal with it with the 3 T's of chiropractic. And what an interesting topic. I mean, I'm super excited to hear Dr. Flynn speak on this. And I know most of you probably already know who Dr. Flynn is, but he's just an amazing guy. He's just a really cool guy. And I met him a while back, and this guy is no newbie when it comes to presentations or to speaking to large groups of people. He has literally traveled the globe and spoke to audiences, just huge audiences, not just chiropractors, naturopaths, dentists, medical doctors, nutritionists. Dr. Flynn, he has practices all over the country. I don't even know how many practices he has, something like 13 or 14 different practices that he has. He's opening a new one in Austin, Texas this weekend. We're all going to be in Austin, Texas for the GPS Summit. I know a lot of you that are on here tonight are going to be there. But Dr. Flynn has an awesome conference, a seminar that's going on next month he's going to tell you about. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be there. It's going to be in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's the Leadership and Longevity Conference. And let me tell you guys, this is the caliber of speaker that Dr. Flynn is. He's going to share the stage with people like Brian Tracy. I mean, my goodness, that's one reason I can't wait to be there. David Wolf, Zano's going to be there. Dr. Charles Majors is going to be there. I mean, this seminar next month that Dr. Flynn is putting on is definitely the real deal. Dr. Flynn is the real deal. And you'll know that. You're going to love him when he gives this presentation. If you don't already know him and love him, he's a coach, a consultant to many chiropractors and many practitioners. And so we're just super excited to have you here, Dr. Flynn. I highly endorse your seminar, the Leadership and Longevity Conference. I hope all of you are there with us. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Flynn, tonight and let you get started with our training tonight.
Hey, thanks there, Doc. I really appreciate the intro there. Wow. Thanks for all the kind words there. Hey, guys, wonderful to hear you guys on tonight. I promise you I'm going to give you some great information tonight to really take clinical application. The great thing is the stuff I teach you here tonight, if you see patients tomorrow, if you see patients on Friday, you can take some of the stuff immediately, chiropractors, and actually implement it in the practice right away. Now, what I want to do is I want to just take a look at this first screen. The one thing that I always found out with patients, for example, everybody likes to follow a roadmap, okay? That's why I called all my programs a roadmap to recovery. Tonight, I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap over the next time here to actually show you how to address stress and depression with the 3 T's. I'm just going to flip to the next slide. And Dr. Tabor, if for some reason if the slides are a little slower, I think just let me know and I'll just make sure I pop them back up because there are some detail in the slides I'd want everybody to know. Okay. The nice part is when you look at, for example, just my background. Okay. Yeah. Guess what? I graduated from Palmer. I love chiropractic more than anything you ever imagine. Yes, I have my nutritional degrees. Yes, I'm a naturopath, but I really want to focus on the 3 T's. Okay, of chiropractic. I'm a Palmer grad. So BJ always talked about significantly about the 3 T's, trauma, toxins, and thoughts. I think that our wonderful profession that has done so much for so many people around the world has really lost its really philosophical roots that way. It doesn't matter if you graduate from Life. It doesn't matter if you graduate from Cleveland, if you're National, Northwestern, Palmer. What happens is chiropractic was based on philosophy. So when I started practice, I got out and I started practicing really intensely that way. And adjustment-wise, I was never at Dr. Zano's actually high level of 2,500, but I hit that level of 800 adjustments after just a couple of years of being in practice that way. Saw some just amazing miracles that were just mind-blowing on that. But one thing I found out though was this: I saw patients come in that didn't get better, and wait, chiropractic never fails. The chiropractor does. But then what I found out, and what I'm going to go through tonight with you, just on stress and depression, but this applies to so many clinical conditions, it's unreal. What I noticed, for example, is I kept on going back to my green books and going saying, what am I missing? My technique, is phenomenal. We're clear certified. We got spinal correction. We do spinal hygiene. It's just the top-notch stuff. What am I missing here? Okay? And then I started reading, and I was going through one of the green books. I'm like going, wait. BJ always talked about trauma, toxins, and thoughts. I was addressing the traumatic part of it. wonderfully. Chiropractic right now has more science and more evaluation tools as far as the adjustment than ever in history. It's amazing. Some of the stuff that's out now today, I didn't even have in school when I graduated back in 1999. So what we have from that standpoint tonight, guys, yes, I'm going to touch on that point, but there's wonderful programs out there that teach that major traumatic part. I mean, I just like clearance too because I love the way they have the spinal correction stuff that way. That's my preference. I don't care what technique you use. It doesn't matter, okay? But what I want you to understand tonight is we're going to address the 3 T's. We're going to address trauma, toxins, and thoughts, okay? Because what I found out with my patients was, number one, they were getting adjusted. They were religious about it. I taught them the philosophy and how important it was. But then I found out there was major things that were actually affecting their normal physiological patterns more than trauma. Okay, now let me say that again. Because one thing that bothers me a little bit sometimes is when actually people get adjusted and they post and said, you're adjusted, your nervous system is clear now. I'm not okay with that, okay? Because I tell people, if you're out there getting adjusted and you eat McDonald's every day, your nervous system isn't clear. It may be subluxation with no damage. Do you follow me on that, guys? But what happens is there's multiple things that affect that neurological system. That's why BJ even talked about trauma, toxins, and thoughts. Now, for example, like I said, I got practices. This is an old slide. I have practices all over the country. You know, it's quite amazing because what we're doing is not only the fact that we have amazing practices that I practice out of on a regular basis, but doctors are starting to catch the concept and now adding more clinics as far as the way we practice. Here's the neat part, my third thing. The main thing I deal with all day long, guys, is psychiatric and female hormone problems. Now, I want to show you this point. I just had a discussion with a doctor yesterday. Yes, I consult doctors, but I want you to understand that when they call me and say, Doc, how can you be so busy? How can you do all these things in the market that we're in today? Why is it, for example, that in our town, you know, we have a bunch of chiropractors? Why are some of them feeling why some are not? Well, the one thing that I always tell people is this. Everybody loves a specialist. Specialists make more money as a doctor. Specialists are a little bit more known for what they do that way. I didn't realize, for example, that my practice and goal was going, okay, listen, I was going to be in a psychiatric and female hormone disorder. But what happened was very simple as this. As I start to apply the chiropractic philosophy in the way I'm going to teach you here over the next short time here, it started to see these problems reverse and go away. We all have chiropractic miracles. We all do just by adjusting. But when we look at some of the long-term lifestyle things that affect us, if we're not addressing the thoughts and toxic part of the situation goes on in our philosophy, we're going to miss the boat on a bunch of things. So where do we get into this? If you look at this slide, for example, this is what all education's on. Guys, I've spoken at medical college, I've spoken at naturopathic colleges, I've spoken at chiropractic, I've spoken to all events. I actually speak more now at medical events than actually I do even chiropractic events. Why? Because they love our 3T philosophy, okay? Now, well, here's what happens. You get out of school, you learn a little bit here, learn a bit here, and this is like patients. They don't know which way to go. They're like, well, do I go supplement-wise? Do I do a detox? Do I get adjusted? Do I do all these things? I read something on the internet. And they're weaving back and forth, and what they're really doing now is this. They don't have a roadmap. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to teach you the philosophy and the science behind the 3 T's. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to apply it to clinical practice. Now, in order to do that, I have to give you a little different paradigm as far as healthcare. Okay? One thing that I want you guys to understand, a paradigm is how we think. Okay? Most people think a certain way about healthcare. I mean, the fact that I go to my doctor, they give me a drug or surgery, and this is how I get better. Well, we know it's different than that. But what happens is they've taken us, even as a chiropractic philosophy and a chiropractic profession, and put us in a natural treatment realm. Okay? And I don't like that. So I want you guys to understand what I call my CSI principle. I don't watch much TV, but boy, I like the TV show CSI. I liked it when Grissom was on there. He's probably the best person. But the one thing I liked about that TV show, it really is applied to clinical practice. They spend so much time investigating. The whole show is about going through all these different people that could be a criminal, and finally at the end they got it down. Well, guys, that's what our healthcare system should be like. But let me show you the different thought process of our CSI principle. What I want you to see on this slide is quite simple. Look at the gray side. The gray side is really what medicine does. Now you say, well, Doc, you actually have 2 approaches on there. You actually look at, for example, the medical allopathic approach. I'm going to use my little cursor here a second, so let me pull up a little pen here. You look at here, a lot of people know the basic medical approach here, okay? Now what I want to show you is this. Let's approach blood pressure. Okay. Now, if we look at a disease-specific approach, as you can see, I'm circling, giving a little mark here. The concept is somebody comes in for blood pressure. Now, our basic medical approach, you can use things like diuretics, ACE inhibitors, channel blockers. And guess what, guys? The blood pressure does work. See, we have to stop denying the people that medicine works. You say, well, doctor, conditions will go away. Yes, but initially all medicines work. It will lower the blood pressure. But people are getting smarter now. They know that there's negative side effects. So people say, doc, I want to look for an alternative approach. And see, a lot of you guys tonight, believe it or not, we're even thinking, okay, what is doc going to tell us to do and take for stress and depression? I'm telling you right now, guys, that is still a false disease-specific approach. Let me explain that again. If you treat it medically or allopathically or alternatively, it's still not within the chiropractic philosophy. You say, why? Because if we take the roadmap of recovery approach and our CSI approach, let's do this. If a person has blood pressure issues that way, that blood pressure can come from, guess what? Look at the underlying cause. It could be a kidney insufficiency. It could be a liver damage. It could be a subluxation. It could be heavy metal toxicity. And if we start to correct and remove that toxicity, that stressor, that subluxation, our 3 T's, guys, what happens to the blood pressure? It goes away. We're not naturally treating it. We got to teach people, for example, that we are doing things to help their body, once again, there's that key word, function properly. And I say, doc, that's what we do. You're right. But sometimes we spend so much time focused on the traumatic aspect, which, trust me, every patient in my office is evaluated traumatically. We do all the stuff looking for subluxations. Where's that major neurological damage that's causing major damage to these people? But we forget, for example, if a person does get a vaccine that causes some renal, kidney, liver damage or toxicity, guess what happens? That can cause that stressor that increase that blood pressure. That's why, guys, some people come in and get adjusted and blood pressure will drop dramatically, and some don't. See, and guys, here's what happens. I will never tell you my successes. Why? We can all list the miracles out. I love those stories. I love listening to other young doctors share those miracles. But you know something? The part that we struggle with sometimes that we don't want to tell people is our failures. I'm going to really talk about my failures tonight that led to the clinical practice and the major now success that we have based on all the stumbling blocks that we did. Meaning what? When I had some of those people coming in and I was teaching them the chiropractic philosophy of how the body heals itself, how it's absolutely amazing, how we have an innate intelligence, and getting them adjusted, believe it or not, guys, the people that didn't get well thought chiropractic failed. And it wasn't. Chiropractic, as we know, does not fail, but the chiropractor can, and my application was failing. So I'm saying, listen, I said, we got to find out a little different perspective of doing this. So I said, I got to create some analogies to really get into the head of people that way. Now, guys, this is one example that I want you to take and teach all of your patients tomorrow. Here, we know, for example, that we know how the body correlates together, but how can we relate it to patients so they can take it home? So I have posters all in my office I created called my Swiss watch principle. Guys, look at all the gears here. If even the smallest gear stopped working, what would happen to the watch? Maybe the second hand, maybe the minute hand wouldn't work, and guess what happens? Now we're going to actually have a dysfunctional watch. Now here's one thing, guys. When we look at the perspective of the watch, we'd never just look at one gear. Why? Because a watch with one gear makes no sense. It spins, but it has no relationship to any other gears. The human body is the same way. Looking at one gear makes absolutely no sense. You say, well, doc, but wait, we're nervous system doctors. You have that gear right here, and it's the control mechanism. Follow me on this. We're going to run a little bit, okay? So that gear right now, as you can see, spins by itself, really has no relationship. This is truly, guys, how the body really looks as far as a Swiss watch. All these gears interact. Do you see what I'm saying? They all have interaction, but here's the part, guys, where I believe, and I'm going to show you the science behind it, where we make some mistakes sometimes in clinical practice. We know that the nervous system is the master coordinator. We know that it's very good at adapting and changing things that way. But when we have other disruptions in the body, it can affect the nervous system. Heck, a subluxation itself is a damage to the nervous system, and then the correlation, for example, the structural correlation between the subluxation causing neurological damage causes dysfunction. But guess what? There was something that happened to the nervous system. Guys, listen, the GI can affect the nervous system. The endocrine can affect the nervous system. The nervous system can affect all these systems, and that's a major relationship, and patients understand that. Do you know why? Here, give you an example. Medical allopathic approach looks at one gear. Let me prove it to you. They have cardiologists. They have neurologists. They have GI doctors. They have heart specialists. They have kidney specialists. They have foot specialists. And they take it out of context and don't understand the interactions. So let me show you some of the science behind that. And what I want to do is this. In order to understand that science of stress and depression, let's look at stress itself. So let's define it a little bit here. Stress, okay, guys? I love this. This should be actually defined in every one of your cases that come in. Why? Because they'll really understand chiropractic to on our level. Let's look at it. Stress is a physical. Guys, there's your subluxations. We know that. Or psychological, there's our thoughts. Stimuluses that can produce mental or physiological reactions leading to illness. So what they're really saying just in the first definition, if you have a physical stressor like a toxin or a trauma, or if you have a psychological stressor, it will lead to illness. Well, how? Because it changes our physiology. Technically speaking, guys, stress is a disruption of, there's that word, homeostasis. See, we're not genetically programmed for disease. We're genetically programmed for homeostasis, normal blood sugar, normal hormone levels, normal sleep patterns, all those normal physiological homeostatic balance. And here's what happens, which may be triggered. You can throw off that balance by being triggered either by alarming experiences, which are trauma, toxins, thoughts, either real or imaginary. Now, if you sum that whole definition up, guess what happens? Whenever there is a stressor, it will cause a breakdown and a change in multiple gears in the body that affect multiple gears. Now, that's why, for example, guys, let's look at our little, here we go. Let's look at our little disruptions. Our physical.
Patrick.
Yes.
We lost you. I think you're. I can't find you in the. We can still hear you, but we can't find you in the group. So I think you fell out of our webinar there.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's just pop that back on, guys. Put down all the internet. Okay, you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, let me extend this a little bit here. All right, so you see the stress slide, guys?
Got it.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. If it happens again, no worry. We will pop back on. It happens. It's happened before. Now, what I want to go back to, guys, is look at your disruptions. Your disruptions can be physical. There's your subluxation. Your disruptions can be emotional, which there's your thought processes, or chemical. There's your toxins. Guys, guess what definition where I got this from? Dolan's Medical Dictionary. See, the cool thing is this, guys. From a medical standpoint, our philosophy has been right for a long time, okay? So that's why, for example, when I started going, wait. So as a chiropractor, when I was applying the physical disruptors, stress that affects our neurological system, I was doing a great job of correcting that. And I realized, my goodness, these other things that can actually cause our neurological system to even have damage, like emotional or chemical, I wasn't addressing. Now, when we look at this, here's the really good science behind the connection between them all. Okay? Now, this is quite simple, basic science. Now, I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to show you where medical colleges where I've taught before and lectured at, they teach this old science. I'm going to teach you new science that is quite self-evident, and it's all over PubMed if you want to look it up. Now, to understand the Swiss watch of what I'm trying to teach you is this. If we look at the interaction just between the digestive, the immune, the nervous system, and endocrine system, here's how it works. Neurological, we have neurotransmitters, the good old brain hormones that we use. Endocrine-wise, we use hormones to connect. That's why, for example, the ovaries can talk to a different part of the ovary. In our immune system, we have cytokines. Guys, don't have to understand that, relate, just understand those are immune hormones. Now you're saying, Doc, that's the science. Everybody knows that. We're even taught that in school. But guys, this is a science that you're not taught, even in chiropractic college today. All those systems, the GI, the immune, the glandular hormone system, they all have receptors for neurotransmitters, hormones, and cytokines. Now let me say that again. See, what happens is this. We know that there's neurotransmitter receptors for parts of the brain, but there's also receptors for what? For the glands and the immune system. Now, here's the even cooler part. Each system secretes neurotransmitters, hormones, and cytokines. Whoa, Doc, I understand the receptors, but you're telling me that an immune cell secretes a neurotransmitter? Yes, it does. See, and that's how, for example, our body can talk back and forth. That's, for example, when we have a subluxation, guess what happens? It causes disruptions to all parts of the body because there's a neurotransmitter effect. But on the flip side, guys, here's what happens. If you get a cold, okay, guess what happens? Let's take a look. One of the most excitatory neurotransmitters that can be damaging, cause major neurological inflammation, cause seizures, cause all the bad stuff is called glutamate. Now, we need glutamate, okay, to run on some of our neurological system. It's the main excitatory neurotransmitter. But if it gets too elevated, it can cause apoptosis or cell death. So what I want to show you down here is this. Let's look at those cells, okay? Let's look at our good cells here. Right here is a dendritic cell, okay? It is the most abundant immune cell in the body. They got little fingers they're trying to grab on. As you can see, here's a pathogen. Here's an allergen. Now, what you'll see is very simple as this. As it attaches to that pathogen, attaches to that allergen, it does release, as you can see up here, cytokines, other immune hormones. That's how we get swelling when actually the immune system actually is triggered by a bug or an allergen. But here, down here at the bottom, look at that immune cell secretes a neurotransmitter, and then it goes up to the rami, as you can see up here, in the neurological system. That's why, for example, guys, the source of the glutamate or the cytokine, for example, is produced by the immune system, but it also has an effect on the nervous system and the immune system. See, so what happens is there's always that Swiss watch interaction between all things. So the immune system, for example, was triggered first, but it had a major effect on their neurological system. Now, wait. Let me say that again, because this is sometimes where I tell people, now, guys, listen to me, don't get offended by this. Sometimes we talk about so much how the nervous system controls everything, we forget there's other parts and other things that can happen in our body that directly affect our nervous system that are not subluxation. Now, but see, that's where BJ was smart. BJ said, listen, there's trauma, there's toxins, and there's thoughts. Let me give you a little bit more. Let's put a real-life example. How is it, for example, when you get a cold, a flu, or bacteria that triggers our immune system, what does it do? It manifests neurologically. You're tired. You don't really feel that great. You can't really think properly. You're kind of unmotivated. My point being is this. The first thing that affected that body, that first stressor, guys, was not a subluxation. That first stressor was an immune trigger that allowed produce a neurotransmitter by the immune system that now damaged us neurologically. Let me show you a little bit more. Guys, here's what happens. Dr. Tabor, anybody on this call, for example, I want to give them this slide. This slide explains so much from neurological disorders to immune disorders to a lot of things. So here, guys, let's go through it. Here's our causes. Let's say you have an immunological cause. Let's say you have an infection, an allergen, a medication, guys, heavy metals, foods. Heck, vaccines are in this issue. What you can now see is this. Look at the immune system is triggered, just like that little bug triggered that immune cell. Now you get that immune cytokine or immune hormone. Now we know that. See, even science knows that. But see, what happens is since there's receptors for that cytokine on the nervous system and endocrine system, now you get this whole catalytic effect, multiple gears being affected. And let's look at the bottom. Activation of these messengers contribute to autism, contribute to psychiatric, contribute to stress, contribute to all these conditions that come about. Now, let's go on the flip side. Let's look at neurological causes. Guys, listen, subluxations, mental stress itself, toxins, cause neurological damage. Neurotransmitters are produced, but then they also affect the immune system and the endocrine system, and then guess what? There's a major catalytic effect. So when you look at these things, guys, if you trigger us from a trauma standpoint on our neurological system, it's going to cause a major effect to all their gears. But flip side, let's go on the other part of the graph over here. If you affect our immune system, you're also going to have a catalytic effect that happens, multiple gears being affected, and here's what happens. Look in the middle. Primary system being affected causes a response. The response causes secondary system to be response. And at the end, guess what happens? There's a major adaptation that happens that they call illness. Guys, here's what happens. When the body is making those changes from way up on top, right or left, these causes, the end result is some pathology that ends up on the bottom. See, but our job is what? As chiropractors, our philosophy doesn't try to treat the thing naturally or medically down below. We don't use adjustments to make autism better. We don't use adjustments to make stress or depression better. What we address is up on the top, right, and left-hand corners. We affect those neurological causes. We affect those immunological causes. That's our trauma, our toxins, and our thoughts. Let's go on. Okay, now guys, this is how important it is to tell your patients by what they eat. Okay, why? Because we know that 85% of our immune system resides in that GI. That means we can trigger that immune system that can even affect us neurologically. We know that the GI is the largest immune organ. That's why, for example, it prevents all these bad things that you see on this graph right here that not get in there. But let's look at what happens just basic anatomy, guys. Now, as you can see, this is just the lining of the GI tract, okay? And all I want you to do is you can see I'm drawing here. This is just one side of the GI tract. The others up here would be the cells up here, okay? And as you can see, there's a nice little yellow film that's here. That's our mucous membrane. Guys, as you know, a lot of people take probiotics. The probiotics are only good if that mucous membrane is there. Why? Because that's where it lives. That's where we got our first coating in our GI tract. If you put your finger on the inside of your mouth, you will have that mucous membrane. It comes from mouth to rectum. Now, guys, little clinical pearl for you guys. If a person's GI lacks that mucous membrane, what will happen is this. You can actually ask them, what does your stool look like? Is it nice and soft, like soft serve ice cream, or is it a bunch of small little round pellets? When it's round pellets, it's dehydrated. It doesn't have that mucous membrane. Now, the great thing is, looking at this graph here, you can see this little cell puking out all these mucus. It's called the goblet cell. Now, clinical pearl number 2. The number one herbal thing that will actually help that mucous membrane is called chamomile. That's why chamomile liquid, chamomile tea, chamomile herb, which is actually more potent. That's why when people do that, they have better GI reaction because it coats the lining. Now, why is that important, guys? Because let's look over here. As you can see, for example, there always is those little openings where things can pass through, okay? When there is damage, for example, to that mucous membrane, it allows, for example, guess what? As you can see over here to the left, I'm going to circle this. It will allow a food or a bacteria or toxin that we eat to pass through this little opening. By nature, that's even called leaky gut. Now, as you can see here, guys, as that passes through, guess what? We have all the immune cells down here waiting to find out those allergens. Now, it passes through undigested. The immune system now does what? Just like that cell before at the beginning slide that we had here. It attaches onto it. Yes, it recruits, guess what? It recruits other immune cells. When immune cells come to one area, that's called inflammation. Let me ask you a question, guys, for you guys on here. I guarantee if you ask patients, when you eat something, do you ever feel bloated? That's an immune reaction, guys. That's an allergic reaction. Bloating is not just I feel full. Bloating, for example, is GI inflammation. Now, when that inflammation comes about, guys, look what happens. There's other neurotransmitter produced, and there's that cycle. Now it affects the brain. That's how we get, for example, major brain connection from our GI. When something passes through that doesn't belong passing through, we get a GI immune response, and now that affects the brain. Now, the great thing is this. What we now can do is we can test appropriately. Here's our first part of that testing for that toxic part. This simply right here tests what our immune system reacts to. Now, if you look here, I know it's a little hard to see because it's a webinar, but you can tell this person reacts to cheese, to peas, to raspberries. And I say, whoa, doc. You're telling me that a person could eat an organic raspberry and cause a neurological reaction? Yes, I can. Let's walk through it, okay? Let's go back to this slide. If coming through here, if that raspberry passes through that little leaky gut, what ends up happening now is the immune system causes that inflammatory reaction that causes devastation to the brain. That's why when a person runs a simple immune test, remember this is not a food test, it's how the immune system reacts to the foods. So this person actually had strawberries. I'm going to show you guys from an example standpoint, you can even have patients that do this. They're eating something that's organic and healthy, which causes systemic inflammation in that GI, which can now travel to our parts of the body and even make our joints hurt. So guys, I guarantee you where you've adjusted people and their pain levels are not going down, but you've never asked them, are they stressing out thought process-wise? Are they eating something bad that could cause inflammation that can even affect the joints? Let's go on. Here's just another test. Now, this is very important because look at this person over here, number one, actually severe reaction to tomatoes. This person, for example, could even eat organic tomato. It doesn't matter. This could even create more stress to the brain. See, what you want to think about is this. Whenever the body comes in contact with stressors, it creates a stress response. And we all know, being chiropractors, how the stress response really affects our body. We've focused so much on how the subluxation causes a stress response, but we have to understand, when we look at the other trauma, besides the trauma, we look at the toxic and the thought processes, guess what happens? It can have the same reaction. Now, here's the cool part. Let's look at the thought process aspect of this. Okay?
Dr. Flynn?
Yep.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we lost you one more time.
Okay. Let's go back there. So, guys, let's go back to the neurological responses. Now, you say, well, Doc, isn't subluxation stuff a neurological response? Yeah, it is. It is. There is no doubt. I'm going to show you how the subluxation affects. See, guys, if you remember that slide, let me pop back to here. If you remember this slide right here is a wonderful slide to even teach more about subluxation. This slide right here is fantastic to teach about subluxation because why? When you actually have the effect of the subluxation triggering the immune system or triggering the neurological system, there is a major effect on all their systems. And now we know the science behind it. That's why when I discuss at medical colleges, they don't disagree that, guess what, getting adjusted is absolutely amazing for your neurological system. It has an effect on your immune system, endocrine system, every system of the body. The problem goes, for example, is when we only talk from that one dimension. That's why I love teaching about the other dimensions, because why? It makes just as much sense to them. So when we look at the neurological responses, here's the great part. Let's go on. And this next slide, guys, is probably one of the most important slides I want you to understand. Here we go. Not all of the neurotransmitters are produced in the brain. Let me say that again. Not all the neurotransmitters are produced in the brain. Guys, I never teach on big words, but here's a cell I want you guys to understand. We all should learn this cell. Okay, why? The endocrine cell, talking about stress and depression, is so important. Why? I show this exact slide to no matter who I'm teaching. I don't like to use big words when I'm teaching people because it might confuse them, but let's break it down. The endocrine cell is very important. Now, as I point down here on the slide here with my pen, here's what I want you guys to understand. This cell actually produces and stores about 90%, guys, 90% of the body's serotonin. So when we're dealing with stress and depression, anxiety, any psychiatric realm whatsoever, these cells are very important. Well, Doc, why are we talking about these? Because here's what happens. Most of them are not made in the GI, or most of them are not made in the brain, guys. Look at what I'm circling. Dr. Tabor, if you can see, what am I circling right now?
Yep.
What system of the body? The digestive tract.
Absolutely.
Do you follow me on that? So when we look at this process that way, when we are actually looking at stress and depression, a lot of it comes from our GI. And I say, Doc, what happens? Well, guys, you ever had a gut feeling before? What happens is when our body needs those hormones produced, guess what? You have to trigger these cells within the GI. Now, let me give you an example. Here's a great clinical example, guys. So here's Mrs. Emery. Emery's 10 years old. Now, this is what I see every day in my office, guys. 10-year-old taking 6 antidepressants. Let me say that again. 6 antidepressants. This is not uncommon when you get to do work like this. Okay? Now, so what happens is here's a nice championship dancer. This girl has been on national stages. Unbelievable. The girl's multiply talented. One day after a vacation, they came home, and guess what happened? She started to have anxiety. She started to have anxiety attacks going to school. She couldn't get up on stage. They had her to psychiatrists, everything like that. They actually didn't know what to do with it anymore. They said, listen, they said, we are having 6 antidepressants. We don't even know what to do anymore. So they said, listen, of course, everybody what happens, we know this just even being chiropractors. Everybody comes in to us at the last resort, don't they? They never follow up with us, first of all, okay? So she comes in, for example, as this. Now, this is the wonderful thing I love about the technology and tools that we have today that we didn't have 40 years ago. So what we did, for example, is this. Well, the first thing I did is took an X-ray, okay? Guess what? And there, I actually had the wrong slide up first. Here's her X-ray. Now, as you can see, guys, listen, let's look at, for example, those hips, bad pelvis. Let's look at the spine, tilts way to the right. Does she have subluxations? Yes, we did. There was no doubt. But, guys, look at that. Look at this GI. Look at how inflamed this GI is. You should not see this much bowel gas on there. Look at over here, right here, there's impaction right here of the stool. Now, just from what I taught you showing the GI, do you really think there's not an inflamed immune reaction going on? It's huge, guys. You shouldn't see any folds, any tissues on an X-ray. The only time you see that is when there's inflammation. Look at her stomach up here. The megablast is too large. So we know that that GI is being triggered. And now what I taught you guys, with the immune system being triggered, we know that there's going to be immunological responses. Well, here's the neat part. I'm going to go back to that original slide here. This was her post-X-ray after 3 months of care. Okay? Hips are better. Spine still leans a little bit. She wasn't done yet. But look at her GI. Look at how the thing is cleared up. Now let me show you what we did. Okay? Immediately after I took that X-ray, and I'll actually still show you her cervicals also, but here's what happens. So we started her chiropractic care, but then what we did is we ordered what's called a neurotransmitter test. Now, we know significantly that our body produces peripheral neurotransmitters that can cross the blood barrier and affect the brain. For example, guys, listen, you see these two values over here, epinephrine and norepinephrine? Guess what, guys? They are 100% made in the adrenals. They are not made in the brain. Yet they cross the blood-brain barrier and they can affect it. Now, if we take a look at this simple neurotransmitter test that can be done by any lab, actually, here's what happens. Here's the funny part, guys. It's even covered by insurance. Not that I care. Guess what? People pay cash in this office massively. But guess what? A person's insurance could run this. I only tell you that as this because a lot of times people say, well, is it a valid test? It's extremely valid. The insurance company even validates it that way. I won't even care if they didn't validate it. I'd still do it. But what I want to show you is this. When you're speaking to a patient and living in their world, they think if it's covered by insurance, they think it's more valid. They really do, guys. It's just the honest truth about that way. But understanding the test, very simple, is this. Red is abnormal. Black is normal. Guys, I teach the patients the exact same way. Look at 9 out of her 10 peripheral neurotransmitters are abnormal. What do you think this little girl's brain is doing? Now, I don't have a lot of detail to teach tonight, but I want to give you the concept of just going through our motto. And this is our motto. I have signs up everywhere in my office. It says, we don't guess, we test. I don't care if you're a chiropractor and you're just looking at spine. We don't guess, we test. Okay? We got to start doing the proper testing in our 3T venue. We test for trauma. We need to test for thoughts. We need to test for toxicity. Okay? And so I've spent my career right now putting together programs for doctors to be able to use this kind of testing that validates their findings of what's going on with them. So look at Emery's test. Look at this thing. Now look at her serotonin's low. Now here's what happens, guys. If serotonin's low, is this even a brain issue? No, it's a GI issue. Look at her histamine. Look at her glutamate. Once again, immune issues that way. So guys, guess what I did to find causal issues? I ran a GI stool profile. And look at this, guys. You guys even know this as chiropractors. The number one upper GI infection in most cases of GI is H. pylori. Look how high it was. She also had a parasite. Now, let me explain something, guys. All I did was do what? I adjusted her trauma. Let's take a look at her, well, let me see here. I think I have her cervicals around here somewhere. I have her cervical X around here somewhere. All I did, for example, was start her spinal correction, removing the trauma. I also started to actually give her the right proper things to actually help kill off her H. pylori and help kill off her parasite that way. Within 3 weeks, guys, 3 weeks, guess what happens? She was off her what? She was off all 6 of her antidepressants. Now think about that. She was off all of her 6 of her antidepressants. And here's one thing. I didn't take her off. Her medical doctor, who worked very diligent with me, took her off. He actually saw her about every 3 days. I saw her every 2 days because I adjusted her 3 times a week. I actually, for example, gave her the appropriate things. That's where I do my teaching. Guys, as you know, Dr. Tabor and other docs, they do their specific teachings that way. My teachings, for example, there are great things out there that teach that traumatic part. There are people out there that even teach things that they call functional medicine. I hate that, guys. That takes it out of our context. I like to tell people, for example, this. I teach the 3 T's of chiropractic: trauma, toxicity, and thoughts. Here is the evaluation tools. As you can see, this simple peripheral neurotransmitter test is actually a simple urine test, non-invasive, very simple for the person to do it. The test kit's sent in. You guys can have these right in your office. You don't have to do anything besides here. Take it, send an insurance card with it that way. They do everything from there. You get the results. Amazing test to actually deal with anybody who has stress and depression. Heck, I guarantee some of the people on this call here may even have a wife, a husband, a family member, a child that has on some kind of psychiatric medication. 7 out of 10 women right now are taking some form of it that way. That's disgusting. And see, the sad part is this. We can help people get off medication just by doing what? Adjusting them. But here, let's say that we even just use the adjustment. Why don't we test them properly to even validate what's happening with our adjustment? I've actually gotten people off their medication with just testing them neurotransmitter-wise, adjusting them, and then it went away, and the neurotransmitter test went back to normal. See, that's the cool thing. Let's have the validation, for example, with all of our diagnostics, with our X-rays, with our urine, with our blood, with all these things that can change from our basic philosophy. If we adjust somebody, let's prove it to them with a re-X-ray. If we actually do some toxic work or do some, I was still call stress work, which is really thought work that way, let's have the diagnostics, our pre and post, to show that. And that's why I love testing so much, guys. And that's why here, look at this, guys. Depression is a normal physiological response to a negative stimulus. Now think about that. Little Emery did not have a brain issue. She actually had a GI issue causing a brain issue. A lot of people, for example, when we look at the Swiss watch principle of healing, guess what happens? There can be multiple factors in the body. It could be a subluxation. It could be an immune reaction. It could be heavy metal poison. It could be all these things that cause neurological damage that result in a condition. But guess what, guys? It's the body's adaptation to a negative stressor. That's it. That's why, for example, what chiropractors really do is they remove stressors. Sometimes I get emails from chiropractors saying, I hate what you do. You're destroying our profession. I'm like, really? Why? Because you're teaching not chiropractic. Chiropractic is about the adjustment. I went to Palmer where chiropractic started. I worked in the BJ Research Palmer Clinic. I actually used to copy his writings into a thing. He used to make people get off all their medications. We can't do that. But he addressed always the 3 T's. He actually got those guys adjusted. There's no doubt. That is one of our skills that nobody, no physical therapist, no osteopath or anything can take away from us. That's our profession. But let's not also forget this. BJ gave us a philosophy that gave us the best idea to figure everything out so people can do what? Have a better chance of having these whole processes going on. Now, Dr. Tabor, can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
So to wrap up the whole understanding of what we're talking about, guys, is this. I am a chiropractor first and foremost. Yes, guess what? I may have went to naturopathic school. The only reason why I ever even went to naturopathic school because I wanted to figure out all the natural remedies to actually start addressing those other issues. I believe in my heart and soul with our chiropractic philosophy, we have the ability to figure out things that nobody can. Why? Because we look at the body like the Swiss watch. The only reason why I use the term Swiss watch is because I want people to understand that all these gears interact. And here's the great thing, guys. When you start looking at patients and they come in even for pain levels, Doc, my back is really hurting. I've been getting adjusted and it's not working. Really? How you been eating? Have you been stressed a lot? Oh, yeah, I kind of been, oh, my goodness, I've been eating bad. Work sucks, blah, blah, blah. So guess what? I can adjust the traumatic part. But if you're not working very diligently to reduce inflammation from our parts of your body, no wonder you hurt. No wonder you're healing so slow. See, sometimes, for example, when I was in clinical practice to start, I thought chiropractic was failing. I thought, guess what? My adjustment isn't working. Okay? Guys, listen, you know this. When you adjust somebody, it always removes neurological damage. So what was happening? These people were literally causing toxic and thought stress on their body by themselves, okay, on top of we're trying to correct one avenue. And when I kept on from my failures of people walking out my door, guys, we've all had this, let's be real with each other. When a person left and said we didn't help them, you beat yourself up. You're like, what's going on? Chiropractic doesn't fail. The philosophy is all right. You're right, the philosophy is right, and I wasn't clinically practicing that. What I want to impress on you guys tonight is this. Listen, for example, when you adjust somebody, make sure to address those other issues. And if you don't handle them yourself, have somebody else address them. Bring somebody else in your office. Train another doctor to do it that way. Do what you got to do that way. Because here's what happens. When I started doing that, the next thing I know, my practice grew massively. You say, Doc, but wait, you were seeing 800 a week. Yeah, I was seeing 800 a week, but I need a bunch of new patients to keep it that way. Guys, listen, I don't need really new patients. I don't. In my offices, when we become that kind of doctor to them, guess what happens? They are there for a long time. They still get adjusted on a regular basis, but I'm doing all the other things, and guess what? They stay longer getting adjusted because now they know from a spinal hygiene standpoint that this is a traumatic thing that causes much more than just neurological damage. It causes immune damage, endocrine damage, all these things. And that's where our profession is so far ahead of everybody. But I want the chiropractors because that's our philosophy. You know the sad part is this? Here, my next slide. My Leadership and Longevity Conference. Here's what happens. Let's look at some of the speakers. Okay, we have Dr. Zano. Okay, we have me. We have David Wolf. Guess what? Now I'm just talking about the longevity. This is the Friday. We have Dr. Shelby Lane. She's one of Oprah's doctors. I've been on there twice already. Okay, Dr. Kendall Stewart. Guess what? A prominent neurologist. We got, for example, Dr. Nathan Bryan. Guess where he's from? Austin, Texas. He works at the University of Texas Medical College that way. See, what happens is this. These guys have all heard me speak, and actually, guess what happened? They were enamored by it, like Dr. Flynn, I love your program. It's not my program. This is what chiropractic has been teaching for 100 years, and they are jumping on the bandwagon of chiropractic. They're not chiropractors, guys. But see, they can only address what? They're looking at that trauma and toxin part going, guys, you guys got it going on. And what they mean is chiropractors got it going on. So what happens is when I actually put together our Leadership and Longevity Conference, I love leadership. That's why you can see we have Brian Tracy. That's why we have John Maxwell's right-hand guy, Kerry Oberon. That's why, for example, we have other leadership coaches that are not listed on here that are going to do what? Listen, as a profession, we have to step up in leadership. We have to be the people out there saying, listen, here's what we do. Remember, us being quiet in our offices, guess what, does not change the world. We want to be able to affect these people on a very good level so we develop ourselves on a consistent basis. Dr. Zano, when we did a webinar with him just not too short time ago, here's what happens. All I wanted to talk about was his preparation. We are up early in the morning prepping for this day. We are working consistently to stay ahead of the game because why? Because we believe Dr. Tabor, Dr. Zano, me, other doctors across the country are working tirelessly to do what? To bring our profession to a whole nother level. We are the doctors of the future. We are the doctors of now. We have the education and understanding in the philosophy and the different view on healthcare that nobody has. Not Dr. Kendall Stewart. You say, well, Doc, he's a neurologist. Yes, but he doesn't have the right philosophy. Not Dr. Shelby Lane. These guys, for example, had me on their shows because why? Because it's different to them, but they love it, okay? So they're going to be teaching their venue up there. They're going to be teaching their trauma, their toxicity, or their thought process of it, but they don't put it all together like we do, okay? So the good thing is, for example, at the conference, I have those select key individuals that are really going to give you a very good perspective of what happens on how to be the best leader and how to create longevity in patients that way. If you become that doctor, a longevity doctor is a doctor that addresses trauma, toxins, and thoughts. You will have a very busy office in a low economy. You will live a very happy life. Guys, listen, I got to fly out this weekend, do some traveling, got another doctor we added to our office, had another grand opening of another office that way. What happens is this. It doesn't matter what town you're in. I have an office, guys, in the town of 250 people with an average income of $12,000 per family. And they're no different than the prices in Green Bay, Wisconsin. In where? In Tampa, Florida. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In Austin, Texas. See, what happens is when you offer this kind of care to them, they will pay for it. You will offer them this kind of care, they will travel to come see you. These are the kind of practices, guess what? I'm hoping there is a good chunk of doctors on here. Even if all of us tomorrow started doing all this work, we could not handle the amount of people that are out there. That's why I'm always pushing people, go to chiropractic college. Go. I honestly, in my office with patients, I get probably at least 10 to 15 people per year go to chiropractic college. Students change their majors. Why? Because once they understand the 3 T's of chiropractic and how it can be addressed. See, our topic tonight was about stress and depression because 7 out of 10 women are taking some form of antidepressant. I can't stand that anymore, guys. But guess what? The 3 T's apply to every condition, every process out there. And that's why we have the best ability, the best education, and here's the cool thing, guys, what I teach, the tools and technology to do it, okay? So I really hope you guys, enjoyed my webinar tonight. I hope you took something away from today that you can go talk to the patients tomorrow. Use the analogy of the SysWatch. Use the analogy, for example, of CSI. I will send you, Dr. Tabor, I'm going to forward you that slide in a PowerPoint slide, that one, so people can just take that and put it into their PowerPoint that way, or they can put it as a poster or a handout that way. So I will get that to you, and then you have your email list. You can email it out to them. Fair enough?
Yes,
and
I'll send it out with the replay. Perfect.
Absolutely, guys. Here's what happens, guys, is just want to kind of, give you an idea. If you want to come to the seminar, here's what happens. It's kind of neat. This is not the ticket price. The ticket price for the seminar is actually $110 for both days. If you want to come and be the VIP, for example, you get VIP treatment, you get personal time actually with Brian Tracy. Now think about that. One of the top leadership coaches in the world, has sold more books than any leadership coach in the history. You can actually sign up on the website. Now if you look, the tickets say $295. If you go on the bottom, there's a promotional code you can type Thrive in. If you type Thrive, for example, you can actually get a discounted rate of $199. Now remember, here's what happens. If you guys want to actually find out anything else as far as the stuff I talked about, guess what? Go to my websites. Go to my YouTube channel. I put out videos constantly for people to be able to use. Now, a lot of people will take my videos and Facebook them and email them to their patients. Why? I work very diligently to put out information out there to get people in your office. See my newsletter, drpatrickflynn.com. My newsletter goes out every 2 weeks. I actually, if you're a doctor that I work with, your office address and your office is up on there. And then what happens is when the article comes out, it says, find a doctor that does this work, and your name can be on there. So the cool part is this. If you have any questions about the stuff that we do, just go check out the websites that way, okay? The Wellness Way, that's actually my clinics. You know what I'm saying? I'm in clinical practice just like you guys are. I work 4 days per week. Now think about that. I work 4 days a week, have multiple offices across the country, and guess what happens? I coach doctors. You say, Doc, where do you have the time? It's really quite simple. These kind of practices run themselves. When you are just teaching the biochemistry of the 3 Ts, guess what happens? You can teach other doctors. You can bring more doctors in your office. You can actually have that whole growth there. That allows me to do all those things. Hey, guys, thank you so much for actually listening to me tonight. Dr. Tabor, I don't know if there's any questions on the webinar. I don't know if they have any things that if anybody popped any questions up there, but if they do, I could definitely answer them now. So, any questions?
All right, awesome. Well, Dr. Flynn, I got to thank you for that amazing webinar. In fact, I'll tell you this, minus the technical difficulties, that was probably one of my favorite webinars that we have ever done, in that the information that you shared was absolutely awesome, and the way that you can put something so complex in such an easy way to understand. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure all the doctors on the line appreciate that. So I just really want to thank you for doing that. Guys, I strongly encourage you to go right now to leadershipandlongevity.com and get your ticket for the conference. It's going to be October 25th and 26th. Get it right now. Remember that promo code is THRIVE. You enter that, you get a discount on the VIP ticket. To hang out with, to get to meet, to get to see Brian Tracy is worth it in itself. But on top of that, we have all those other amazing speakers, and the 2 days or the weekend that it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be there. I've already got my tickets, and it's early enough now. You can book a flight if you don't live close to there. Get it done, tonight. Get it done tomorrow.